testosterone.
I'm the anabolic deficient bald guy, and to be clear, this video is about natural biological increases in your testosterone for informational and educational purposes only. A huge topic in social media where people are selling you magic potions, pills and workouts, and it's just complete nonsense. What a load of testicles. Is that how you say that word? So I'm going to explain why people are not communicating this topic in the nuanced manner that it needs, which can ultimately help you detestable. And even if you can increase your testosterone naturally, what difference would that actually make to your muscle building potential? And I very briefly discussed this in a previous video, but that video was not about this topic per se, it was about other issues. And so that really wasn't an in-depth enough explanation. And so to be clear, there is not a linear relationship of increasing testosterone and muscle growth potential per se. And so first of all, let me give you some numbers. For an adult male, we're looking at around a range of 240 to 950 nanograms per deciliter. Now, of course, those ranges can vary slightly depending on the sample group. For example, age can influence this range of testosterone. When you get older, your testosterone levels can decrease, but around 240 to 950 is the lower end of the spectrum, all the way to the higher end of the spectrum for the natural testosterone ranges of adult males. When we look at testosterone on a spectrum, if you increase from the lower ranges to the more average ranges, yes, there is an increased potential of muscle growth. If you are increasing your testosterone from the average ranges to the above average ranges, it is not evidence-based that that will be significant for muscle growth. However, supraphysiological levels of testosterone, when you take external substances, this does have an impact on increasing muscle growth potential beyond the average or the above average normal ranges that healthy adults have. And of course, that's not something I'm recommending. However, people selling you the wrong information that just increasing your testosterone per se leads to more muscle growth does feed into the money trap of the illusion industry. Don't test me. Be clear that testosterone is absolutely an anabolic hormone. Absolutely it is. But the theory of something and the practical application of something is not always straightforward. It's not always as we would assume it would be because the body is complex. And this is one of those cases based on the evidence we have. Now, in 10 years, 20 years, could the evidence base change and we have new information? Absolutely. And so if the information does update in the future research, of course, I will give that to you by notification on your phone if this channel is not dead by then. But this video is what we have at this point in time, the state of play right now. And to be clear, this video is purely on tests' relationship to muscle growth, not some of the other factors that of course tests can influence. And so let's start with the lower end of the spectrum, more towards the 300s and below, for example. This is not Sparta. And so absolutely, if you are on the lower ends of the spectrum, increasing to the average ranges can make a difference in your muscle growth potential. That is what you call different gravy. For example, Bhasin 1997, and this study looked at 12 men, again, a very small sample size, but he is an excellent researcher in this field and one of the most prolific researchers, as you're going to notice throughout this video. And they found that replacement doses of testosterone increased fat-free mass and muscle size and strength in hypogonadal men. So this is one study that indicates going from low ranges to more average ranges can absolutely make a difference. And so of course further studies were needed, and indeed we have them. And then we have perhaps one of the gold standard pieces of research, again by Bhasin 2001. And this study shows, again, that going from the lower ranges to the more average ranges does make a difference. And when it came to increasing within the average normal ranges, this study did not show any significant difference. It was very much unclear. And so some of the best research we have does not show this difference. That's absolutely why we have to come to this conclusion at this state of play that increasing in those normal ranges does not have a significant difference in muscle mass potential. And in addition, this idea of test range increase naturally in these ranges is very much under-researched at this point. And so this study is absolutely why we need research into these topics, because the theory does not meet the application. It would make sense that the more tests you have, per se, the more muscle growth potential.
But per se,
that's not what the evidence is showing. And I'm not going to give anecdotes to a wider audience on this channel. But in terms of low testosterone ranges, it's more attributed to people with hypogonadism, which is a medical issue where there is a decreased output of testosterone. And so for many people watching this, you will most likely be in the average range anyway. There may be some people with a deficiency, but for many people watching this, again, your testosterone levels are not essentially something to concern you. And it's very overblown in social media or YouTube fitness, the need for people to be be overly concerned with increasing their testosterone naturally. And some of the research I did mention used replacement testosterone methods within the research to increase within the natural range. And the reason they use these doses in these studies is to tightly control the testosterone levels and therefore try to create more quality information. But of course, this is not the method you will use if you're thinking about increasing your testosterone naturally, which begs a different question all into itself. Can you actually increase your testosterone naturally long term in a significant way? And actually, when it comes to resistance training, that is extremely problematic. Trying to increase your testosterone during a workout session should not be your focus, because those increases in test are actually transient and short term. It floats away like the wind, and we have data to support this. My take on the current body of evidence: while I can't dismiss that acute hormonal elevations may play a role in the growth process, I'm quite confident in saying that if such an effect does in fact exist, it would be of small consequence. And so when it comes to naturally increasing your testosterone through training, eating, sleeping, natural supplements, are they actually effective long term in allowing you to increase your testosterone naturally? That is a whole different ball game, and that is a question for another video. And so really the point of this video is that your focus needs to be on the work. It needs to be on the training and the consistency, not thinking about how much test you're increasing in your session, but focusing on the muscle building protocols, on stimulating those muscle fibers for growth, increasing the sarcomeres in parallel, recovering with the nutrition, with a good planned program and consistency and overload over time. And when it comes to supraphysiological external substances, increasing your muscle mass potential, that's very well known. For example, Bhasin 1996. And in this study, they had 4 groups, and they had a group which trained naturally, a group which took external substances, and the group that had the external tests, the supraphysiological ranges, did show the most lean mass increase. And so to the smoking gun that people like to talk about as to why you can increase muscle mass potential in those average ranges. And I think it's just very miscommunicated. And it's by Mouse et al. 2016. And so this was not an intervention study. What they did is they took a survey that is conducted in America, and they compared the testosterone levels and the lean mass levels of a range of people. And what they found is that the people with the higher testosterone levels had the most lean mass. And so doesn't that show that the more testosterone you have, the more muscle mass you have then? Well, no, it doesn't, and here's why. These 252 men that were studied, this was a retrospective study. They took a survey from the past and just compared numbers. There are many other variables which could have affected those muscle mass levels of those men. What were the differences with these men's training, their nutrition? Are they all lifetime natural? There are so many factors which come into play. This study just looked at a survey and compared 2 figures. And in addition, lean mass means the total body weight minus fat mass, and therefore lean mass does include parts of the body such as your bones. So it's not just muscle mass per se. So please keep that in mind, because essentially my interpretation is that this shows correlation, and it does not clearly show a causation. And indeed, it does conflict with what Bhasin 2001 found, which was a very good study, a much more in-depth intervention study, which did not find this effect in the average ranges. It absolutely is a useful study, but it is not definitive in showing causation at all. Take the causation in that study with a pinch of salt. And what it does essentially is provide the need for more research in this area to try and show some clear causation. And so why is there so little research into this area? Because it's very hard to conduct. It's expensive, taking people of similar test levels, getting that baseline level, increasing those levels, then researching muscle mass growth. There's so many variables at play. It's very hard to conduct. And so potentially higher test in the average ranges could mean more muscle mass. Maybe. It's unclear. Therefore, with the evidence base we have, we cannot state yes. We cannot give these affirmative positives and then sell you the programs, the supplements, the training sessions, all this information, because it's simply not correct. And therefore, we cannot say that there is a linear relationship per se with the more tests you have, the more muscle growth for the natural range. And so most of the videos you're going to find on YouTube about this topic are just complete trash. There is one very decent video by Jeff Nippard, and he communicates it correctly. And so to be very clear, when we look at the spectrum of test, natural test, and your muscle growth potential, if you are deficient or if you're in the lower end of the spectrum, increasing that absolutely can be important. If you're in those average ranges, increasing to the above average is not evidence-based that that's going to have a significant difference. It just is not at this point in time. In future, of course, that could change. And that is the nuance that needs to be communicated with this topic. So thank you for watching. I will discuss methods for naturally increasing your test in another video, as it needs an in-depth explanation all of its own. And so I'm James Lincoln, Shredder Sports Science. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon.